Okay, so small question. I have heard that you said that the Sony ZV-E10 was stabilized. So no need to take a stabilized lens that has OSS, like this kit lens right here, because I am desperate to find a optically steady shot lens that will the Sigma 30mm f1.4, will that do it for me? So I have on here, this is a ZV-E10 with a small rig cage on it, with a Sigma Art 30mm f1.4 lens that's been adapted using the Sigma MC11 adapter. It works almost like a native lens. Now, here's the thing. So the ZV-E10 natively, let me just turn off the question so that we can kind of concentrate here. So the ZV-E10 natively does not have any image stabilization, in the sense of it doesn't have any sensor in-body image stabilization. What it does have is artificial digital stabilization. Now, there's different forms of this. One form of it, which is most common, is to use something called active stabilization. Now, active stabilization is fine if you're not moving too much. The challenge with that reality is that they're going to get a lot of jelloing and rolling shutter effect. So that's why I don't recommend using the artificial active stabilization. What I suggest is turn off any and all stabilization that's in here. No lens stabilization, no SS, no OSS, no steady shot, no active steady shot. Turn it all off. And when you record that footage, bring all of that into something called Catalyst Browse. And so this here is Catalyst Browse, just one of the example clips that I have over here. Now, one of the cool things about Catalyst Browse is it's from Sony, it's for free. You can play back the footage as needed. You'll notice there's a little bit of shakiness. But when you click on any one of these clips, if you right click on the image itself, you'll have an option that says stabilize clip. Actually, it's not coming up on the thing. What happens if I go here? If I go to tools, there you go. Now we've got a thing, and now it says stabilize clip. This option comes up. When you do that, you'll have the option to hit the analyze. And so once you press analyze, it's going to tell you, well, it does not contain, because I'm using an adapted lens, it's telling me this particular notice, but don't worry about that. I'm going to tell it to proceed, and it's going to analyze the clip, and you'll notice there's a little bit of a crop. And if I play this back, I have a 20% crop here. If I play this back, you'll notice how much smoother the one on the right is in comparison to the one on the left. So if I move over to, let's see here. Now, it's not perfect, but you see the difference. Shakiness, not so shakiness. And so this is the advantage of using something like Catalyst Browse, which is something that's highly recommended, if you ask me. This essentially is what makes the Sony ZV-E10 camera such an amazing tool. Not just the Sony ZV-E10, almost any new camera from Sony, more or less. The Sony ZV-E10, the Sony A7S III, Sony FX3, FX30, A1, A7C, A7 IV. So almost all of these Sony cameras have this gyro data-based stabilization built into them. So essentially, it doesn't matter what lens you're using, so long as the lens has electronic contacts. So any native Sony lens, if you'll notice here, any native Sony lens will have these electronic contacts that communicate with the camera, letting it know what is the lens that's being used, as well as what is the focal length in play. And in the case of an adapted situation, right, the MC11 also has electronic contacts that are built into the adapter. And on the inside of the adapter, I have electronic contacts. So, and this is a Sigma to Sigma. It's known for compatibility. And so anytime you're using known lenses like this, then you're going to be able to have no issues bringing it into Catalyst Browse. Now, there is a second situation where if you use a manual lens, this is an 85mm f1.8 Canon FD lens, and you'll notice here, using the adapter, there are no electronic contacts. And so when I mount this on the Sony camera, on the Sony ZV-E10, If you bring it into Catalyst Browse, it's not going to work. However, if you bring it into another third-party software, and I will link to a tutorial at the end of this video, in which you can use something called Gyroflow. And Gyroflow, basically, you bring the same clip, the same footage that you captured on the Sony ZV-E10, and then you simply tell it what the focal length was, and it'll be able to stabilize the footage in similar fashion that we were able to do in Catalyst Browse, as I was showcasing here. So I hope that answers your question. Personally, I don't feel like having a OSS-based lens is all that important, unless you're talking about capturing content or shooting stuff that is like anything beyond like 80 millimeters, right? So you talk about 80 millimeters, 100 millimeters, 135, 200 millimeters and beyond. You want to have some sort of optical steady shot built into the lens that you can use. Now, you could use the Catalyst Browse software, and I've done it with an 80 to 200 millimeter lens, and I'll showcase an example of that here, and it works out just fine. But anything beyond that, anything like once you're going like really far out, it's going to be in your favor to have some sort of optical steady shot or lens stabilization, again, at longer focal lengths. But anything less than that, anything less than 200, anything less than 135, between 70 and 100, 70 to 200, that focal length, you could get away with lens stabilization so long as you're not running around with it. So long as your only movement is, some sort of panning, tilting, and rolling, right? But it's all stationary for the most part. The moment you start moving around with it or walking around with it is going to make it very challenging for you to stabilize. But if you're standing still, you could stabilize using Catalyst Browse with any lens that has electronic contacts. I think Sony is brilliant for enabling this feature. It's one of the reasons why I bought Sony cameras. It's one of the reasons why I'm probably going to stay with Sony for a long time, especially for professional work. And for home stuff, I've got Canon for streaming and things like that. But if I were to choose just one camera and I was starting today, and knowing what I know now, I would most definitely probably choose Sony. Mainly because of the fact that you have so many features that enable content creation, and they make it easy, and they give you so many great tools for it. I have 3 Sony ZV-E10s that I use for work, as I mentioned earlier. But if I were to buy a new camera today, and if you could afford it, I would say skip the ZV-E10 and get the FX30. But if you're on a budget, you don't want to spend more than $1,000 on a body, and this is going to be your first body, then yeah, the ZV-E10 is a great choice. But if you can afford it and you can spend, maybe close to $2,000, get an FX30. That would be my advice. But yeah, I mean, any lens you use, you'll be able to digitally, artificially stabilize it without too many problems. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. I'll see you soon.